Tonight we're going to be presenting everything using CorelDRAW 11. All versions of Corel, at least that I know, 9 through 13, have the same tools, but they may be in a different spot or look a little bit different. Please take the time to refer to your version of help in your CorelDRAW to find the tools we're using. If, when you're reviewing things after the presentation, you still have trouble, please try the help first before calling us. But if you still have problems and can't understand or can't find a tool, call us up at that toll-free number again, and we will be more than happy to assist you. Tonight's webinar is going to last approximately an hour to an hour and a half. This is a continuation of other seminars that we have presented. We're going to go over some new tools tonight and some old tools that we've already learned about. One of the new tools we're going to talk about tonight is Object Manager. We're then going to go over the interactive envelope tool again. We used that last week to create all of our, not last week, but the week before last, to create all of our text effects. The contour tool to create second colors that are cuttable. And the intersect tool, trim tool, and weld tool to create some of the designs that I'll be creating this tonight. Some of the things we're also going to be working on is setting up a template to use with split front jerseys. We're going to talk about in the template how to set up the rulers, how to set up snap lines, and other essentials that should help you to design when you're designing for split fronts. We're going to go over how to do split fronts, and we're going to go over how to set up a tail using, of course, split fronts. So these are just a few of the things we're going to go over today. We may cover more of them, but we will definitely get these covered. The last time we were together, we talked about some standard sizing, and these are just guidelines to you, and they're basically based off of recommendations by the industry. And we're going to need to know these today as we're designing for the garment for the split front. And normally when you're designing for the split front, you're normally going to design either a left chest, a youth front if it's a youth, adult front, or a pro front. Sometimes you can get into a jacket back if you really want to start to get large, and very seldom have I done a jumbo for jerseys on a split front. So the one you'll probably will talk about more today is the adult front and the pro front. The youth, of course, is just sized down proportionately for a smaller size garment, and the garment itself that we use as a template will need to be downsized as well. Let's start and talk a little bit about split front designs. What is it? What to look out for when designing? So let's go over a little bit of what you need to know. First of all, like we just got through discussing, you need to know the size of the design that you want it to be. So you need to get that discussed first. Now, most buttons on the jerseys are normally a 1/2 inch to 5/8 of an inch. Those sizes really don't vary very much. However, the next thing that I want you to know is the distance between buttons. This can vary from jersey to jersey. And I've kind of noticed that there's two different types of jerseys. There's a standard jersey, which gives you a button configuration that is about every 4 inches from center of button to center of button. And let's take a little look at what that kind of means. If you'll notice here, I've got some buttons made up on the design. The white buttons in this layout show you the standard design layout for buttons on a normal jersey. The first one starts about up where the two come together, and then every 4 inches you'll find another white button centered. The other type of jersey that is available is designed specifically for embroiderers when they're doing their fronts, And the configuration for buttons, from the first button you go 2 inches down. From the second button you go 6.5 inches down. From the third button you go 3 inches down, and from there on out it's 4 inches down for each button. And what that does for you is it creates a larger area for you to put your designs in. Now you'll see here where the yellow buttons are, that's that configuration we were talking about. And you'll notice that with this type of a jersey, this button gets eliminated and this button gets eliminated. It gives you about 6.5 inches between the two buttons in order to put your designs. Now a number of manufacturers are doing this as standard. There's more jerseys out there nowadays with this type of a button configuration than there were before. So they're really trying to get to the embroiderers to allow them to do these larger size designs. The other thing that we're going to need to know is what type of an overlap do we want to do. Now there's a few different types of overlaps that you can do. You'll see here that this side of the jersey overlaps this side, and if you look at this word Michigan, you'll see that the overlap goes right to the edge of the jersey, right along the edge. Okay. However, the part that goes underneath the jersey is only slightly overlapping. What happens is when you button up the overside of the jersey, it covers this up and allows this side to line up properly. Another way to do this type of a jersey is with a full overlap. Now, the overside is still the same. However, the side that goes under has been extended all the way to the edge of the garment once it's unbuttoned and produced. Now, you can do this either way. It's going to produce the same result. However, you'll want to practice with it a little bit in order to find out if you haven't sewn down split fronts before. You'll want to kind of check out which way they work. I have embroiderers tell me that the full overlap is better than the slight overlap. However, I've also found out that it's to what works best for you. However, keep in mind that there's two different types of overlap that you can do. So one is a flush with a very slight overlap, and one has a full overlap. Now, what we're going to do from here is we're going to discuss really how to start setting up a template to be able to design split fronts with. And what I want to do is I'm going to take you into another CorelDRAW page, and I'm going to explain what I do, and then we're going to create these designs. However, it would definitely benefit you to create a template based on what I'm going to show you, so that you can easily create split fronts for jerseys without having much difficulty. I'm going to switch now from this to another, which is my template layout. You'll see here what I've done is I've actually created a page size which is 12 inches tall and 18 inches wide. There's a couple of reasons for that, and I'll discuss them as we go. I've also taken the time to lay out the buttons that I need. And if we zoom in here, you'll see that I've created snap lines for several different reasons. Now, I've created a center line on my page, which is also the center of the garment. Now, this might be hard to see, so I'm going to go into my Object Manager and show you how you can change your snap lines to a different color so that you can see them better. Sometimes when they're gray, they're very hard to see. So I'll go into my Object Manager, And what Object Manager does is it shows you all the different pages that you have and what's on each page. Instead of seeing it graphically, you're seeing it written out. For example, if we look at the master page and we open it up, we've got all these guidelines. Right now, the guideline is set to gray. Tells you that there's no fill. And all we're going to do is select all these objects. You'll notice when I click here, it highlights this snap line. I'm going to hold my Shift key and select all the snap lines. And I'm simply going to right mouse click on my black color. So now my snap lines have turned black. I find this useful when I'm creating areas that I don't want to overlap. I'll change different colors for snap lines so that I can show, for example, my page size, I can show my printable area, and I can show areas of a document or a design that I don't want to print in or something like that. So let's go back to discussing the snap lines and why they're created. I placed snap lines at the halfway points, both horizontal and vertical, of the page, which is basically centered on my jersey. I then created some snap lines that are as wide as the buttons. In this case, they're about a ½ inch or a quarter of an inch on each side. And then I created the overlap, which is roughly 1 inch from center each way. There's about 2 inches of material in the overlap area that you can utilize to create the overlap with. Now, by taking a design like this, which is the jersey that I've created, now when you get your CDs, for those of you that got the CDs with your seminar here, you will have this template on your CD so you can open it up and utilize it. However, it's also good to understand how it works. So I'm going to be going through a lot of different things and how my templates work and what I do. So I've created this jersey, and I've placed it in the proper position for the buttons. I have placed the standard buttons, which are in white, and the new offset buttons, which are in yellow, to show you, or the customer, how the design fits in. I've also left this here for you to understand as you're designing. This is the underside of the shirt. This side of the shirt tucks under the other side, which I call the overside, which goes over the underside, so that you know which side is which. I also left those what you need to knows on the design for you, so you can kind of use it as a step-by-step guide. The other thing I want to show you, I've got 3 other pages that are involved with my template. Let's zoom in so we can see the page. The second one are all the different pieces that I use to create the design with. You'll find the jersey is here, the buttons are here. You'll also find rectangles based on the sizes that I've shown you for garment sizing for guidelines. For example, if I click on Pro Front, it will bring up this box, which is a basic size of a Pro Front. I can then copy that to my page number 1 and utilize it, because step 1 is figuring out what size we need. There's a few other things that I've included in here that I use. These rulers that you see here, I'll zoom in a little bit. These are utilized when I'm faxing a copy to a customer. Sometimes the customer's fax machines are set up to shrink the size of their proof, and I want to make sure that they have exactly 6 inches so they can take their ruler and measure it out, and when they put it against whatever they're putting it against, they get a true size. I also have all this information on here that it's urgent, your approval is required if you have any changes. Just basic information for my faxing of proofs. I also come down here and I've got my job number, my PO number if they've got one, number of pieces, is there a split or not a split, what kind of a sew disc, the approval areas that they have to sign in order to be able to get the job done. So you don't have to use those if you want, but for designing purposes, the garment, the buttons, the sizes are really important. So if we go back to page 1, step number 1 is what size is the design that you want to do. In this case, we're going to start with the adult front. So I'll select adult front. I'll press Control C, which copies something from the page. I'll go back to page 1 and I'll hit Control V. That actually pastes it onto page 1. It helps that when you change your guidelines that you select the page. Right now I've got guidelines selected and it put that paste onto the guideline section. So let me delete that. I will go back up to my page 1 and select it and then paste again. Control V will paste. So when you're messing with the object manager, make sure you have the page selected that you want to work on. Sorry about that. Okay, now you'll notice that this box is actually centered on my page. It's not necessarily put exactly on the jersey where it belongs. It's centered on the page. Okay? So you can manipulate that or move that. It's just a way for you to visualize the actual size of an adult front. The next thing we need to know, we don't need to necessarily know button sizes. We need to know which button configuration needs to be used. So what we can do then is, if we want to use the newer buttons with the 2-inch and then the big 6.5-inch area without buttons, we simply select on these two buttons that are in the middle. We delete them, and now we've got the button configuration based on the 2-inch instead of the 4-inch equal spacing. Now we have this whole area between these buttons to work with. This helps when you're doing things like angled text, slanted text, things of that nature, and we're going to go over that a little bit today, and you'll see how that works. Now, if when I'm designing something with these buttons and I don't have the new design, I can select those and delete those as well. Now you'll notice that I have buttons that I have to work around. So if I'm creating something, I have to fit between the buttons. So the people that have created this new configuration for these buttons for the embroiderers have really done us a great service. So try to take the time to find those button configurations. You'll find your designs will work a lot better. Okay, so for now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete those 2 extra buttons off of the 4-inch spacing. Okay, that's the distance area. The next thing we kind of have to determine is how we're going to do this overlap. Now, you can do it either way you want. I'm going to show you both ways today. I'm going to show you how to do each so you can decide whatever you need done. Now, from here, normally what I do is I'll take and start designing now that I have everything on here. So one of the first things that I can do is go ahead and select my text tool. Again, this is a very basic tool that we've discussed in other seminars. I'm going to type in the word Michigan as we saw it on the first page. Now, the font that I like to use, a nice block style of font, is called Indiana Solid. And at this point, I want to make this the maximum size that I can. So, if I go ahead and zoom into my page size, I can see that the adult front maximum size is 3.5 inches high and 14 inches wide. So, with the text selected, I'm going to use the toolbar that I've created and I'm going to change the size. Now, if you want to know more on how to create a custom toolbar, we went over that in Seminar 1. Refer back to that CD so that you can find out how to add this toolbar. Because when you're doing text, you don't have absolute sizes in the changeable toolbar. So, again, we want it to be 14 inches wide and 3.5 inches tall. I'm going to center it on my page. I'll go to Arrange, Align and Distribute, Center to Page. And you'll see it fits in within that box. Now, you'll also notice that I have a little bit of room here. That means that I don't have absolute sizing here. There's something that's created this font which is a little bit different. So I can actually just manually stretch this font out so it fits within my box. Now, at this point, what I can do is I'm going to take the word Michigan and I'm going to arc it. To do that, we covered that in CD number 4, which is text effects. We also covered that in CD number 1. I'm going to use the interactive envelope tool. I want to make sure that the envelope is set to single arc. I'm going to grab the bottom and start pulling up. I'm then going to press the Control key, which moves the top and the bottom together. When I get just past center height of my lettering, I'll let go. And I now have a vertical arc. At this point, you do not need to worry about where the buttons are. We will position this afterwards. Now that the arc is made, I want to make it 2 colors. To do that, I'm going to go back to my interactive tools, and this time I'm going to choose Contour. The reason that we want to choose Contour instead of making an outline is the contour gives us cuttable lines when it's created. Not like an outline that gives us an outline that cannot be cut. For more on that, refer back to CD number 1. So, what we want to do is we want to set this font that I've picked, Indiana Solid, is a nice beefy font. It's kind of like it's already got the outline on it. So we're going to create an inline. We're going to set this tool to inside. The number of steps we're going to set to 1. We only want 1 outline around everything. The thickness I'm going to set to 0.1, and I'm going to change the color to yellow. Now, if I don't like the thickness that I see, I might want to make it a little bit thicker. So I will then change this to 0.125, press the Enter key, and it'll make it a little bit thicker for me. Once I'm happy with making my adjustments, I then go to Arrange, Break Contour Group Apart, and now I have 2 pieces that I can cut with any cutter. Let's take a look at this in wireframe. You'll see I've got a foreground and a background that I can cut. Now that I have it in 2 colors the way I want it, I'm going to go ahead and make the outline color to a blue color. I can now select both pieces, holding my Shift key, selecting both pieces, and I can now move this into position where I'd like it to be. Now, I'm kind of centering it between the bottom of this button and the top of this button. I can now zoom out to take a look at the whole design. I can also at this time select my shirt, color it to the color that the shirt's going to be or a reasonable color thereof, and kind of take a look at what the design looks like. I'm not sure where that text came from. Okay. Now, I don't really need this box anymore that shows me the size of an adult front, so I can delete it, or I can move it to the back in case I want to use it later. So I'm going to hold my Shift key and I'm going to press page down. Now that didn't delete it, even though it looks like it disappeared. If we look in wireframe mode, it's still there. It just moved it behind the jersey. Now I can get a good look at what it looks like on an extra large jersey. When I created this template, I used an extra large jersey. You can modify this if you want by ungrouping it and shrinking it down based on the width of a large or a medium or a XX, depending on what you're doing. Okay, so if I'm happy with the design the way that it is and position the way that it is, I can then go to my next step, which is creating the split front. I'm going to zoom back in so I can see everything. Now, to create a split front, we have to decide which way we want it to be. Do we want a full, or do we want a full split, or do we just want to butt up to the edge? In this case, the first one we're going to do tonight, we're going to butt up to the edge here of the overlap. Now, we're going to use a tool that we've used before, which is called, instead of trim this time, we're going to go through intersect. We've been through weld, we've been through trim, now we're going to use the intersect tool. Let me zoom out here so we can zoom into the word. Now, this tool, for those of you who have joined us for the first time, is a lot like a cookie cutter tool. We're going to create a shape. In this case, it's going to be just a simple box that goes around the area that we want to cut out. So to do that, I'll choose my rectangle tool and I'll draw a rectangle that's a little bit larger than the area that I want it to cut. Now, when we use intersect, it leaves the design inside of the box. So we're going to have this cut. This is the overlap. It's going to cut this whole area right to the edge of the jersey. In the beginning, when we're doing this, we want to have turned on source object, which is our cookie cutter, and the target object, which is whatever we choose to cut, to stay behind once we've done the intersect. And I'll go through this very slowly, step by step, so that you can understand it. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to click on intersect with. We've got the box chosen, 2 check marks in source object and target object, and then click on intersect with. We now get this arrow that allows us to choose the part of the design that we want to intersect. We're going to start with the background on the blue background of the lettering. Once it's cut or intersected, it moves it to the front. This gives you a good view now of exactly where it's been cut. You can see it's right to the edge of the jersey. I now want to cut the yellow. Now, you'll notice that because we left target object and source object, the box is still here, and the original background is also still here. So now we want to take and intersect the yellow. To do that, we still leave source object and target object turned on. We want to choose intersect with after we choose the box. Sorry about that, I forgot to choose the box. Intersect with, This time we're going to click on the yellow. And now it has trimmed, or intersected, sorry, the yellow for us. Exactly in the same spot where it did the blue. Now what we're going to do is we're going to intersect the other side of the design. So we're going to move the box so it goes over the other side of the design. And this time we're going to make it so it just goes over a little bit of overlap. Let me zoom in. So that we can butt up the edge of the design. We're not going to make it go all the way across the front of the jersey. We're going to go just to the edge of the design. Now, if you're good at lining things up, you can go right to the edge and place it right on that seam and cut exactly. In the beginning, you might want to give yourself a little bit of error just in case you don't get it lined up properly when you sew it down. Now, in this case, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the intersection. To do that, we have again the source object and the target object. We want the source object to stay on for the first intersect, but we don't need the target object. That's the object that we select that we're going to trim. We don't need that whole background still there when we're finished. So, I then click on intersect with, and now I'm going to go and click on inside the box the background color, and it trimmed it for me and moved it to the front. Now we're going to go back and trim the yellow, but to do that we want to go to wireframe mode, and the reason is I can't from the normal display mode see that yellow any longer. This yellow is actually half a yellow. Okay? So we need to go to wireframe so we can see that edge. So I'm going to go to wireframe. Again, these are buttons that I've created to go from wireframe to enhanced. And now you can see where that foreground is. So what we're going to do is choose the box we're using as our cookie cutter. This time when we're finished though, we don't want that box to be around. So we're going to take the check mark off. Make sure the target object, which is the foreground that we're going to select, is also turned off because we don't need the large foreground still there when we're finished. We'll click on intersect with, choose the foreground. You'll notice it got rid of the box. I'm going to go back to normal mode now. It moved the yellow to the front, and now I have those four pieces for foreground and background for my split front, lined up to what I call the edge of the jersey. Okay, I'm going to undo this. I'm going to undo all the intersects we just did, and now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to make it overlap this whole design. I'm only going to undo the last few that we've done because the right hand side is exactly the same when it's created. The right hand side you're designing, it's actually the left hand side if they're wearing the jersey. So instead of taking my cookie cutter tool to the edge of the jersey, I want to bring it over all the way to the other side. Now, imagine, if you will, this lapel part coming underneath. It's going down this edge. It's about an inch wide past the center of the button. So we want to cover that whole area. And remember, this area we're going to sew down actually goes underneath the part that buttons over the buttons. It's basically just giving you more area to work with for an adjustable factor. Okay, we need to go back and turn on source object because we want to leave the square for the second cut. We're going to leave target object turned off. Again, choose intersect with, click on the background. I have to go to wireframe mode, choose my box again. This time when I'm finished, I don't need the source object, which is the cookie cutter. Click on intersect with again, choose the foreground this time. My cookie cutter goes away, and now I have a larger overlap to go underneath the jersey. So again, you can go either way with it. You can do that butt fit if you're good at doing sewing down your split fronts and lining them up, or you can go a little bit over and give yourself more of a factor that you can make a mistake with. Okay, it's either way that you want to do that. However, as you see now, we have two pieces of our design that we can cut. If you don't have a cutter, you can send it to us, we'll cut it for you, or you can send it out to any of the other places that do that kind of stuff. Now, at this point I'm going to take a little bit of a break. I'm going to check to see if we have any questions and see if I can answer them to this point. Okay, I don't have any questions. Well, hopefully you all understood everything we just went through. If not, at the end, if we have time, you'll be able to ask questions and I can go over it again or clarify it if necessary. So, what we're then going to do next is we're going to take, well, normally what I do next is take this design, get it proofed, send it out to the customer. You don't have to send out the jersey to the customer. Normally, when you're doing proofing, okay, let me just delete the jersey for right now. All I normally send out to the customer when I'm doing my proofing, and I want to get their okay on things, I will send this design out showing the buttons. Let me zoom in, this might be easier to see. Showing the button configuration and how it falls. I'll then also, like I said before, I'm going to include these things, which are all of my statements, my sample boxes, my rulers, and if they don't quite fit, I'll move them around. Try to get everything on one page though, so they only have to sign and fax you back one page. Now other people also do it by email, so you could actually email this to a customer. You can actually change your design into a PDF file, which you can actually send to your customer. If you're not utilizing that yet, you might want to. I'm trying to get my ruler here. It's kind of behind everything. This is probably a good time to actually show you the object manager again. What I'm trying to do, if we take a look here, is on page 2, I'm looking for this ruler right here. And these are all the different objects. That's this ruler here, and here's this ruler. As you've seen, I had a hard time grabbing that ruler, but by having the object manager open, I can find it. Now I can copy it, Control C, and go to Control V. And normally when I print this, I set it to print out at 100%, and then I fax it over to them and have them sign it and send it back to me. So that's normally what I do with my template. Now you can design your template any way that you'd like. However, like I said, I do believe that a template for you would definitely help in the designing process. Okay, let me undo the things that I've just done so that we can go through this once again. Now, I'm going to remove the color from my jersey so that we can see the background again. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this size that we used, which was for the adult. Okay, and basically we would be ready to start again. I would open up the template. Let me close this. Save changes, no. Leave data on clipboard. I could do that, but I'm not going to. Then I would go back and open up my template again, and it would start me right from the beginning with those questions, the buttons, the jersey, and on page 2 I've got all the different things that I need. So let's get started one more time. Okay. I went through and I've shown you how to create, well, a vertical arch. I've shown you how to trim both the flush and the overlap. And I've gone through how to create a template. The template that we created was based on one that I use on a regular basis to create my split fronts. And when you're designing these questions that you need to know, the size of the design, what size your buttons are, where your buttons are positioned, what overlap you want to do, will help you to develop your split fronts easier. I'm going to kind of go over next how to create this angled look, and then how to take care of the overlap. However, there's one thing I want to point out if you're an embroiderer, and that is you want to be careful, because this is an oversized one. This is an oversized design that we're going to do. You want to make sure that you don't go any larger than your largest hoop size. I've had customers call me up and explain to me that, hey, they created this great design, but it's too big for their hoops. So make sure you know what hoop sizes you have, and if you can fit at least half the design in at a time. Okay, so don't design anything bigger than your hoops. Okay, so we're going to go through and we're going to create wolverines, and we're going to make it on an angle, which is an oversized design. Now, if I've got something that I want to be oversized, let's go back to our layout template. Again, we need to know the size, so it's going to be oversized. Now, we know one of the biggest sizes we have is what's known as a jumbo back. However, that's normally too large, okay, depending on what kind of a jersey you're using. I'm going to go to the next size up from adult front, which is pro front. I'm going to copy that and then paste it. Okay. This now shows me exactly the size of what's known as a pro front. I'm also going to design this for the embroidery button sizes. I'm going to get rid of these 2 buttons that are in the middle because I want to make it as large as I can. I'm going to, as you can see, based on the size, 80 square inches. If we get larger than this box, we're going to have to pay for the next size up. So we kind of want to use this as a guideline, but we are going to get larger. And as long as the width times the height is less than 80 square inches, we'll be okay. I'm going to try to show you how you can take something and still make it larger than the box size, yet about 80 square inches. So the first thing that I'm going to do then is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type in Wolverines. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose that font that I like. And I'm going to go to, again, to Indiana Solid. I'm going to make it a size kind of like the last one, which is the size of an adult front. It'll be 14 inches wide. It'll be 3.5 inches tall. And then I'm going to center it on my page. I'll go to Arrange, break our nuts. arrange, align and distribute, center to page. Now, you'll notice that we are under the size of what they call a pro front. We're actually at an adult youth. However, we're going to create that angle look that I showed you, and we want to make sure that we stay within 80 square inches. So, first thing that I want to do is I want to create the angle look, and the best way to do that is to simply click a second time on your lettering, grab this center grab handle on your left or on your right. In this case, we're going to do it on the left, and we're just going to pull it down to create the angle. What I'm trying to do is stay about even with this button right here, top of the button. Now I'm going to take this side and I'm going to pull it up. And again, I'm trying just to stay as high as the button. I'm a little bit over. And I'll bring down the snap line again. Still a little too high. There we go. We're just about there. Okay. Now, based on the size of this design now, if we look, it's 14 inches wide and 6 1/8 inch tall. If we multiply 14 times 6.125, we're looking at 85 square inches, which puts us over the 80 square inches. So what we'll want to do is maybe take a little bit of the angle off or shrink down the size a little bit. In this case, what I'll do is I'll take a little bit of the angle off. Okay. And now if I multiply these two numbers together, I should be under 80 square inches. Another trick, because I really wanted it to be this big, is when it's finished, you can return the rotation because you still have the angle. We can now rotate it. And you see the angle is still there, but now we just got rid of a lot of height. We've gone to 14.72 wide because of the angle and 3.84. If we multiply that out, we get only 49 square inches. So we could actually make this even larger than the original size that I had it. So let's go back and make a larger size. Let's pull it out a little bit. What I'm trying to show you here is there's more than one way to, beat the system. So now that I've made it a little bit larger, let's rotate it so it's almost straight. Get our new numbers, 16.8 by 4.141. We're looking at 69 square inches. So we could even go larger. Okay, but I'm not going to at this point. I'm just trying to show you that you can still make a larger design, larger than the 80 square inches, in order to make your design larger. Because all you're paying for is square inches. If you leave it in this design like this, when you send it to them, they're going to charge you from top to bottom, left to right. But once you've already trimmed it and everything, you can rotate it and ship it out. Okay, so let's go on from here. What I want to do next is I'm going to create the second color again. Go to the interactive contour tool. All your settings should still be there. I'm going to use them because they work. Once I get my second color, my contour, I then go to Arrange, break contour group apart, choose the background, change it to the color that I want. Now I have to go through and I have to trim this. Now, this trim is going to be a little bit easier than the other one, and here's why. If you see right here where the split is, it lines right between two letters. Let me zoom in and you'll be able to see that a little bit better. Now remember, this side overlaps this side, but the letter V is right on the edge. We don't actually have to trim this. We can just separate it into two parts and still be able to do our overlap. Now, if we had the design so that it was touching, like the letter H in Michigan, we have to cut it in half. Hello? So we can take from here and now go through and just use the word the way it is without trimming it in half. Let me convert this to curves. Let me take the background, I believe, and the foreground. It's grouped. I have to ungroup it. Okay. Now we want to separate these two pieces, so we can just simply break this apart. Go to our wireframe mode. Choose the outline pieces that we want. Hold your shift key. Sorry about that. I'm choosing all the outlines and then combining them together. Now I'm choosing all the yellow pieces and going to combine them together. There's the yellow and the blue for the left half. Now I'll work on the other side. And again, I have to go to wireframe so I can find the center of the R. Hold my shift key, choose all the other outside edges. Now, if for some reason all this lettering gets in your way, you can delete it before you go through all this. I can see the lines through here, so I'm able to select all the pieces, combine them together, select the letters, the yellow parts. I'll group them together. And now I have those two separate pieces. I'll go back to my normal view. And now that I'm finished, I have a left side and a right side. I can then choose all these pieces. Again, now that they're separated, I can rotate them, get them straight, and now when I send it to the cutter, or if I've got to send it out, it's less than the 80 square inches based on height times width. So hopefully at that point you understand now how you really don't always have to intersect or trim something in half if it's not touching. You can actually make adjustments so that you get that split right down in between letters. Okay, I'm going to get set up again for the next design that we're going to do. So what we've done is we based our split on the individual letters of this design. Now we could have included the E to go underneath as well to give you a little more of a fudge factor, for lack of a better word. However, because it falls right on the edge, you shouldn't have to do that. Okay, now we've done almost the exact same thing with the first design, except we had to cut it in half where it overlapped. And the second design, we could use the individual letters. And we went through on this design how to make it larger based on square inches and get away with still paying for something a little bit smaller. What we're going to do next is we're going to start working on a tail and how to split the tail. Now, the reason that I put this big warning here, buttons are your enemy, beware. If you're not using the jerseys which have the special button configuration, doing tails can be a challenge. And we're going to get into that in a second. However, I've just noticed I've got a question. Fonzel asks a question, how would you put the proof into a PDF for the customer to review? That's a great question. At the end, I'll cover that for you, and we'll go over how to do that. Okay, so when we're creating tails, buttons are kind of the enemy. If you can find the jerseys and get the jerseys that have the special button configuration, things will work better for you. You'll notice that we had to design this design so that it fits in between a button. Okay, we could actually go a little bit larger. However, when you've got the standard button positions, which is every 4 inches, creating tails takes on a life of its own. So I'm going to try to show that to you and how it works. However, be aware that buttons can really be your enemy when it comes to creating larger images like tails, especially when you get into 1 and 2 colors. And I'll try to show you that as I'm doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring up my layout template again. And again, we're going to follow those steps. Okay, what size design do we want to use? Well, I'm going to bring up that Pro Front again, and we're going to try to make this as big as we can. Control C on my keyboard. Control V will paste it down. Okay, button sizes are standard. The distance, I'm going to leave these buttons just the way they are right now so that you can see what I'm talking about as you're creating the tail. Okay, the overlap, do I want a large overlap or a small overlap? We're going to go this time. We're still going to do both to explain them to you. And you can decide which way you want to go with it. Okay, I'm going to get rid of all this extra stuff that we don't need. So I'm going to go back to Object Manager. I'm on page 1, so I want to be on page 1. I don't need this artistic text. Don't need this text. Don't need this text. And I don't need this text. Too many things cluttering up the area. I've also got this text. I'm not sure why I put it there, but we want to get rid of it. So now I have a nice clean working area. First thing I need to do is I need to type in the word that I want. In this case, we're going to use cougars. And for those of you that were with us on the last seminar, I used this same one before. Well, it helps if you don't have uppercase turned on. Now, this time I'm going to use another font that I like. It's called Brush Script, and I use the BT version of it. It's a little bolder than the MT version, and these fonts that I'm using are on the CD that you get, so if you want to use the same fonts I'm using, you can do that. And what we want to do now is we want to kind of figure out what we need. When we're doing tails, a standard tail, when you're doing a tail, a cap height of about 3 to 3.5 inches is usually used. Now, because this design, and I'm going to zoom in, has upper and lowercase letters, it's really tough to see. If you look, hold on for just 1 second, please. Okay. I'm going to have to switch presenters, so please bear with me for a second. I am a little convinced today, if you joined us at the last seminar, I think that the webinar software does not like the font that I use for this. So I'm going to have to look into that, but bear with me. I am getting things started again. And we're going to bring us back to where we were. Okay, let's pick up where we left off. In order to check the height of the capital letter, what we want to do is we want to draw a box. And we want to make that box 3 inches or 3.5 inches tall. Reason being is I want to know what the cap height is. That's the measurement that we're using when we use script lettering. So what I want to do is I'm going to change the box size to a height of 3.5. Now, with the height set, I can now enlarge the font to fit the box. I'm going to zoom in so that we can see this a little better. Once I have the top of the letter touching the box and the bottom of the letter touching the box, I know that this cap height is 3.5 inches tall. Once I have the cap height the size that I need it, I then need to work on the width. So I'm going to zoom out. According to this, a pro front can be 4.5 inches high and up to 17 inches wide. We have to include a tail on here, so I'm going to stretch this out to be 14 inches wide. I'm not going to change the height. I'm going to make sure that my non-proportionate scaling is turned off, and then I'm going to type in a width of 14 inches. Now, the height remained the same. In this case, it's telling me it's about 4, but I know the height of the capital letter is actually about 3.5 inches tall. Now, you'll see where we're at right now inside of the Pro front. This button here is starting to be a problem. So pay attention to where the buttons end up, and that's why you want to find that other style of jersey. Now, on this template, I have a tab called Tails. And there's 3 different tails that you can choose from. In this case, we'll just use the straight one. Let me ungroup them. And I'm just going to copy it from here to the front page. Control C to copy. Control V to paste. And I want to move that tail so that it comes to the edge of my letter S. And then I need to adjust it so that the height comes up a little bit more. I also need to make this tail longer because the end of the tail needs to get to the end of the C. So I'm going to click on my shape tool, choose just the nodes that are at this end. Click on the nodes, bringing them over, holding my control key so that it doesn't wander up and down, it just goes straight till it gets to the edge of my C. Now, at the same time, if I want less room between here, I can shorten this side of it as well by simply selecting these nodes and then bringing them down and making the adjustment. Okay, and that will shorten up the tail for me. Okay, now with the tail in this position, you kind of notice that where the S and the tail come together, they're a little bit off. The only thing you want to make sure of is that this point doesn't touch this part of the S. We will adjust this afterwards. Now what we want to do is we want to weld these 2 pieces together. So we select the tail, hold our shift key, select the word Cougars, and we weld it. This joins all the pieces together. If I go to wireframe and look, where there were 2 pieces before, where the tail and the letter S came together, there's now 1. It's now welded together as 1 piece. So now I'll zoom back out again, come out of my wireframe mode, and we need to now work on that tail because that doesn't look very good. So I'll use my shape tool, start by selecting this node and deleting it. And if you want to know more about node editing, you can get a hold of one of our other videos, which is, I believe, CD number 2. We went over how to do node editing. And all I'm doing is adjusting nodes to try to make this transition look better. And once I have it the way that I like it, I'm not too happy where this point comes in, so I'm going to use that trick I showed you to get rid of it so that it flows nicer. Okay. Now that I've cleaned that up, I've got the word Cougars, and the actual height now from the bottom of the tail to the top of the letter C is about 5 5/8 inches tall, and now it's 15 1/8 inch wide from the edge here to the edge here. Now, if we take this design the way it is right now, and if we were using the standard button layout, you see that I have kind of a little bit of a problem trying to get it to fit between 2 buttons, because this area here is about a little under, or a little over, 4 inches high. And all I'm doing right now is just centering it between the buttons. And you'll see that I've got a little bit of room between the buttons for this design. So it does fit between the buttons, but just barely. Now, where you'll run into a problem is when you create a second color. In this case, we're going to do an outline again. Instead of the inline, because this is a thinner font, we're going to have to do an outline. So I'll go to my interactive tools, choose the contour. This time make sure that the contour is set to outside. The steps are set to 1. We'll take a look at what a 1/4 inch looks like. That's 0.125, I'm sorry, that's 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to change the color to red, just to give me some difference. I'm going to zoom in so that we can see this a little better. And now you'll notice that with the second color put on, I'm now touching the buttons, which is a problem, because when you hoop this and try to sew around it, you're going to run into an issue. Okay, so there's a couple of ways you can try to adjust it, making it a little thinner. However, again, I think one of the things you want to do is work with that other button configuration. But you can work with the standard button configuration by trying to make adjustments. For example, I can move this design over to the right and gain more space around the button. And let me move up. And now we've got more space, even though it's off-centered. Here's the center of my design way over here. Now, remember this, the buttons themselves when you sew are on the underside of the garment. So if you use a smaller trim or intersect and don't get near the buttons, you can still utilize this because the top of it has the holes. So we could actually probably make this a little bit bigger and not have to worry about buttons by cutting this shorter. And I'll show you how to do that when we get to that point. Okay? So at this point now, we've got 2 colors. We've got black and red. The outline looks pretty good. I'll live with that. I then want to go to, with the contour selected, and I know I have it selected because it says contour group on layer 1 at the bottom. I then want to go to arrange and break contour group apart. That now gives me those 2 pieces I was looking for. Now that I have 2 pieces, I want to put the word baseball in the tail. So I will go to my artistic text tool again, type in the word baseball, I'm going to change it to Arial bold. We'll use Arial black. Kind of make it as big as I want it. Just for now, I'm going to change it to white and move it on top of the tail so I can see it. Now, I can't make this much larger, but I can pull it out a little more. And if you were here last week, you saw me utilize a tool, the envelope tool, using this setting right here, the unconstrained mode. And that will allow you to start pulling these corners out as nodes, and you can then start to follow the actual shape of the tail. Now, like I explained week before last, that these are just like nodes. So if you want something to be straight, you simply have to select it and choose straight line. It will make it straight. Now, once I have the word baseball the way I want it, I then need to join it to the tail. To do that, I can combine it, hold my shift key, choose the lettering, hold my shift key, choose the part of the tail that I want to cut it out of, go to arrange and combine, and now you'll see the red coming through and it says Cougars Baseball. Once I have that the way that I want it, I'm then going to go ahead, I'm going to get rid of this Pro front background here. I'm going to color the jersey some color that I want it. In this case, I'll use gray. I'm kind of a boring guy that way. Now we need to trim this. And we're going to go through the steps again for trimming. To trim this, we want to create a cookie cutter or a box. And we're going to intersect. Now, because we're looking at, and I'm going to get rid of these buttons right here. I'm going to get rid of the yellow buttons because really I'm focusing on a standard layout here because I want you to understand that buttons can cause a problem. So let me get rid of these yellow ones. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to trim this kind of halfway between the button and the edge. Reason for that is we want to have enough room for the sewing machine or the embroidery machine to go around the design. So in order to do that, we are going to make it this distance halfway between the edge of the button and the edge of the garment. We're going to go back into our shaping tool, choose intersect. When we do the first set of intersect, we want source object selected, target object selected because we don't want them to disappear until we finish the other side. Click on intersect with. I'm going to choose the background color first. Then I'm going to choose the cookie cutter again. Click on intersect with, choose the foreground, and now I have two separate pieces on the left. The original is still there because we need it for the other side. Now what I'm going to do, let me zoom back just a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my box, my cookie cutter, bring it over to the other side to encompass all of this. I'm now going to make my overlap. I'm going to come right to the edge of the baseball jersey. In this case, it's set up an inch from the center of the button. And if you want to get particular on it and really be to the edge, you can zoom in and make your adjustments. Now, with this selected, when I'm done cutting, I don't need the target object any longer. That's the original design. Click on intersect with, choose the outside or the contour that I created. I now have to go to wireframe so I can see that foreground color. Choose my box. This time source object doesn't need to be on. Intersect with, I'm going to choose the foreground. And now I've got an overlap. Take a look at it in wireframe. That's right here basically. This goes to the edge. This goes over a bit, which will be tucked under when it's buttoned. So I hope that helps you to understand a little bit more about how to create designs for jerseys that overlap. Here we've covered, again, how to adjust for buttons. Again, remember, buttons are your greatest enemy. They can cause you the most headache and the most difficulty when it comes to doing split fronts of any design. Now, you can actually also split any type of a design that you have. If you have a piece of clip art like a baseball and you want to separate it, as long as it's a vector art, you can do this type of a separation. Just utilize the proper procedures for lining things up so you know you're cutting everything where you need to cut it. Well, at this point in time, I'm going to open up the telephone line. Fonzel, we will also cover how to create your proof in a PDF format. If there's any questions at this point in time, what I'd like you to do is press the number 6 key on your keypad and go ahead and ask the question, and we'll see if we can get it covered. if nobody has any questions at this time, I'm going to answer Fonzel's question on how I would make this, turn this proof into a PDF file. So I'm going to go back to the design I just created, and I'm going to go through how I would make a PDF file out of this design. The first thing you need to do to make a PDF file is you need to make sure that your page size is at least as large as the design that you're created. To do that, if I double click on my pick tool, I can then find out that it's approximately 40 inches wide and 33 inches tall. So I'll then click off the page so nothing is selected. Make my page size now 40 inches wide. I think I said 36 inches tall. Let me zoom in. Now, you want to take your design and basically center it within the page. Okay, once you have the design centered, you're then going to go to File, choose Publish to PDF. This will create a PDF file out of it. Now there's a couple of things that you're going to want to know before you save it. Number one, you need to put it where you can find it or where you normally put things. Let's see. For now, I'm just going to put it where I put all the rest of your stuff for this course. Okay, under Settings, a couple of things you want to make sure of. Number one, when you're doing this kind of stuff, you want to set your bitmap sampling to color at 300 dpi, grayscale at 300 dpi, right here where it says output all objects as, make sure it's set to RGB. We discussed the difference between CMYK and RGB back in the course number 3, and you want to make sure because it's defaulted originally to CMYK. Normally, because I'm using 3 different pages here, I want to send just the current page, page 1. If you don't set current page, it's going to send page 2 and page 3, and all the customer's going to see is the tails and your stuff that you use to create things with. Once you have that set, just click on OK. Give it a name, whatever you normally give it, and click on Save. CorelDRAW will then create a PDF file, and let me bring that PDF file up and we'll take a look at it. If you haven't created PDF files before, you might want to start doing that. It makes everything a lot easier getting out to customers. Okay, let me show you my Acrobat Reader. Bear with me for one more second. I'm going to switch my screen over to that. And then what your customer is able to see is what you've got here in the PDF. Now, what makes this good in comparison to sending them a bitmap or any other type of a design is they can actually click on the zoom tool and zoom in and see even the most minute detail. Now, by doing this also, there's a few things that you want to realize. One, you are sending your customer the vectored object. Okay? In Corel 13, there's extra settings which allow you to lock your design, allow you to create passwords when you're doing PDF files. So if you have Corel 13, you've got more individuality over control of your customer. You can allow them to print or not print. So you'll want to play with this if you have Corel 13. Okay? Hopefully that answers your question, Fonzel. If you press the number 6 on your keypad, let me know if I did answer your question completely or if there's something you still didn't understand. Okay. Do you have 13? Okay. In that PDF output, in those areas where those tabs are, you'll want to take a look through that and play with that a bit. That way you can lock it so the customer can only view it, or needs a password to view it, or can't even print it, or can't edit it. Okay, it's very important if you've got customers who are just trying to get artwork from you. Okay. Okay, any other questions? I do have a question from Tamara. It says, how do you get the CD? I'm assuming you mean the CD for the webinar? Gotcha. Gotcha. That comes in the mail. Normally it'll go out next week, by the mid to end of the week, and you'll see it in the mail. Did this help you out at all? Excellent. Any other thoughts or comments or questions that I can help you with right now? Okay, great. Anybody else on the line maybe has a question? Yeah, who's this? Hi, Renee. I have the 301 software that I use that comes with the Ioline software, and it allows me to create the different types of discs. I also use Drawwings. Are you familiar with that at all? Okay. Now, okay, what you'll want to do is contact them at Drawwings and ask them, first of all, find out to make sure you've got the module for doing satin stitch and zigzag stitches. Okay? If you do, ask them where you can get the information to learn that. That's probably the easiest thing to learn in Drawwings. Okay? Because the rest of it, dealing with thread counts, dealing with how many times the needle goes down, that's a little confusing sometimes when you're trying to learn it. But to learn the zigzag stitch and satin stitch around an object, that should be relatively easy. Okay? No problem. If you need us to do some CDs for you, or I'm sorry, some discs for you, feel free to give us a call. Okay? Is there anybody else that has any questions at this time? Okay, well, this basically concludes the seminar here, and I'll wait another couple of minutes for anybody else who might have another question. However, again, for those of you who didn't hear, the CD for this should be out to you by mid next week, and you should see it by the end of the week or beginning of the following week. Okay, I guess